Guilty on all counts, life imprisonment without parole. The words hammered through the newsroom speakers, echoing the judge's grim pronouncement. Elara Vance, a celebrated chemist at Thorne Pharmaceuticals, watched the screen, Maeve O'Connell's mugshot flashing, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. It was a ghost from a past she'd tried to outrun, now a stark, inescapable reality. The next morning, Elara moved through her pristine lab at Thorne Pharmaceuticals, a sanctuary of gleaming chrome and precise measurements. Her hands, usually so steady, trembled slightly as she calibrated a mass spectrometer, a complex chemical formula displayed on the holographic interface. Dr. Jian Li, her former professor and mentor, observed her from the doorway, a thoughtful frown creasing his brow. "Everything all right, Elara? You seem distant." She forced a professional smile. "Just a late night, Professor. Nothing a double espresso can't fix." But the weight of Maeve's verdict pressed down, heavy and cold. Later that evening, in her stark, minimalist apartment, Elara's phone buzzed. A heavily encrypted message. She opened it, her breath catching as Maeve's voice, raspy and desperate, whispered from the tiny speaker. "Elara, my star child, remember the cure. It's the only way." Fragmented memories flashed. Lush green forests, the scent of damp earth, a child's laughter. Elara gripped the phone, her hand trembling. It had to be a delusion, a trick of the mind. But the raw urgency in Maeve's voice was undeniable, a call from the depths of a forgotten world. 25 years ago, the sun dripped through the ancient trees of Willow Creek. Maeve O'Connell, her hands weathered but gentle, knelt by a winding path, showing a young Elara the delicate veins of a plant. "This, little star, is for the fever the earth provides, if you know how to listen." Villagers passed, nodding respectfully, offering warm greetings. "Morning, Maeve. Blessings on your healing hands." Young Elara, with bright, curious eyes, absorbed every word, every lesson, her small fingers mimicking Maeve's careful touch. Life here was simple, connected, and Maeve was its quiet heart. A few months later, the idyllic calm of Willow Creek began to fray. Towering smokestacks clawed at the sky on the horizon, a new chemical processing plant rising like a metallic beast. Maeve watched its construction from the edge of the forest, a profound sense of foreboding settling in her bones. She expressed her concerns to a younger, more ambitious Sheriff Brody. "That factory, Sheriff, it feels wrong. A wound on the land." Brody, eager to embrace progress, scoffed. "Just old wives' tales, Maeve. This plant means jobs, prosperity." But Maeve saw the subtle logo on a construction sign, Thorne Pharmaceuticals, and a chill ran through her. Months after the Thorne plant smokestacks first choked the Willow Creek sky, a different kind of shadow fell upon the valley. It began subtly, a cough here, a lingering fever there. Soon, the children, usually vibrant bursts of energy, grew pale, their laughter replaced by weary sighs. Animals, too, sickened. A deer found disoriented by the river, a farmer's prize rooster suddenly listless. Maeve O'Connell, her heart a drum of growing dread, moved through the community with a quiet intensity. "My little one, her breath rattles like dry leaves," a mother whispered, clutching her ailing child. Maeve's calm hands soothed, but her eyes, sharp as a hawk's, missed nothing. She noted the unusual sheen on the river water, the way the elderberries wilted before their time. Back in her cabin, as young Elara watched with wide, curious eyes, Maeve began collecting samples, her ancient, leather-bound text spread open beside bubbling tinctures, blending the wisdom of ages with the urgency of a new, unseen threat. In the sterile silence of her apartment, Elara Vance was a whirlwind of focused energy, yet her mind churned with an unsettling blend of dread and intellectual thrill. Historical medical reports and ecological data from Willow Creek sprawled across her sleek table, each document a whisper from a past she'd fought to bury. The industrial poison's historical impact, now confirmed by cold, hard data, painted a grim picture. Yet, amidst the scientific jargon, she found vague, almost poetic references to Maeve's unorthodox remedies, cryptic notes about roots and leaves, lunar cycles and tinctures. As Elara cross-referenced them with her own advanced chemical knowledge, a startling pattern emerged. Maeve hadn't been a poisoner. She was a asterisk healer. A groundbreaking one. A sense of fierce urgency ignited within Elara. This wasn't just about vindicating Maeve. It was about reclaiming a lost truth. Night pressed against Maeve's cabin. The rain, a relentless drummer on the tin roof. Inside, her small laboratory hummed with a different kind of storm. Maeve, her face streaked with soot and worry, peered into a microscope, the crude instrument revealing the poison's insidious signature in her samples. It wasn't natural. It was a cruel mockery of nature, an industrial byproduct twisting the very essence of life. Her hands, usually so steady, trembled as she frantically flipped through ancient texts, their brittle pages filled with forgotten wisdom. Willow bark for fever, yes, but what for a sickness that steals the spirit itself? She whispered, her voice a low incantation. She began testing, combining herbs in ways her grandmother had never dreamed. Desperate for a counteragent. Each failed concoction was a strike against her community, a moment closer to the point of no return. The weight of every sick child, every wilting plant, pressed down on her, a ticking clock in the relentless rain. Back in the present, Elara clutched her phone, Maeve's voice a frail, distant echo through the encrypted message. "I made an antidote, baby, but I couldn't save everyone." The words were weaker now, tinged with the weariness of years, but the love was an unyielding current. Maeve spoke of a key ingredient, coded in natural terms. A whispered riddle that clicked with Elara's research. Her plea became clear, a desperate inheritance passed across decades. Lineage recreate the cure, not just for Maeve's innocence, but for the legacy of healing, for the whispers of hope Maeve had fought so fiercely to keep alive. Elara's resolve hardened, her hand clenching around the phone. The weight of this inheritance, this sacred duty, settled upon her. She was Maeve's daughter, and she would finish what her mother started. Maeve's cabin laboratory hummed with the quiet intensity of creation. Days blurred into nights, the scent of earth and strange chemicals mingling in the air. Her back ached, her hands were stained with pigments and tinctures, but as the last drop of liquid fell into the bubbling flask, a profound stillness settled over her. There it was, the antidote, a viscous, glowing liquid, shimmering with an inner light that felt ancient and yet utterly new. Her face, streaked with dirt and exhaustion, finally softened into a weary smile. "The earth remembers, and so do we," she whispered, her voice rough from disuse, a prayer more than a statement. She took a small, wilting fern, its leaves yellowed and brittle, and carefully applied a single drop. Before her eyes the fern stretched, deepened its green, and pulsed with renewed life. A fragile triumph, a whisper of hope in a world drowning in poison. But the quiet hum of the plant's revitalization was quickly overshadowed by a prickle of foreboding. A storm was gathering, and this precious light, this hard-won cure, would soon draw its ire. The next morning, the deceptive calm of Willow Creek shattered. Young Elara, her bright laughter usually echoing by the river, stumbled. One moment, she was skipping stones, the next, clutching her small chest, a guttural cough tearing through her. Her skin, usually sun-kissed, was ashen, and her breath came in ragged gasps. A frantic villager's cry pierced the air, reaching Maeve as she tended her garden. "Maeve! It's Elara!" Maeve's heart seized. She ran, her sturdy legs pumping, the fear etching itself onto her face, replacing the calm wisdom. The murky river, usually a source of life, now seemed to mock her with its silent threat. Seeing Elara gasping, convulsing, Maeve knew. There was no time. The antidote, untested on humans, raw and dangerous, was their only hope. She would risk everything. Back in the cabin, Maeve cradled Elara, her hands trembling as she uncorked the glowing vial. Fearful whispers from the gathered villagers pressed in. "Is it safe, Maeve? What is that strange liquid?" Maeve ignored them, her gaze locked on Elara's fading eyes. "Hold on, my sprout," she murmured, her voice a lifeline. With a desperate strength, she forced the viscous, luminous liquid past Elara's lips. For a terrifying moment, nothing. Then, a shudder ran through the child's small body. Her gasping breaths deepened, steadied. the ashen pallor began to recede, replaced by a faint flush of color. Elara's eyelids fluttered open. Her eyes, though dazed, now held a spark of recognition. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. A miracle. But in the stunned silence, awe quickly curdled into suspicion. Some faces held wonder, others a chilling mix of fear and accusation. From the periphery, a shadowy figure melted further into the forest's edge, observing. The uneasy peace didn't last. Later that day, the crunch of gravel heralded the arrival of Sheriff Brody, his face grim, and, beside him, the impeccably dressed Elias Thorne, his smile far too wide. Maeve O'Connell. Brody's voice was devoid of warmth. You're under arrest for the poisoning of this community, and of young Elara Vance. Thorne stepped forward, holding a pristine folder. Our experts have analyzed samples from your remedies. They contain dangerous, unregulated compounds, toxins, Mrs. O'Connell. It seems you've been experimenting, perhaps a little too recklessly. Maeve's eyes, filled with heartbroken denial, swept over the divided villagers. Some whispered in agreement, others stared in stunned silence. She clutched the still recovering, confused Elara tightly. I saved her. Maeve's voice was a fierce whisper. I saved them all. But Thorne merely smirked, and the glint of handcuffs reflected the setting sun, sealing her fate. The courtroom air hung thick with the scent of fear and stale wood. Maeve O'Connell, her hands clasped calmly before her, met the prosecutor's gaze with a quiet dignity that belied the chaos around her. Elias Thorne, resplendent in a tailored suit, watched from the front row, a confident smirk playing on his lips. His hired experts had spun a web of lies, twisting Maeve's ancient remedies into dark concoctions, her healing hands into tools of poisoning. They spoke of unknown compounds, of reckless experimentation, of a dangerous woman who played God with her community's health. Maeve's public defender, a young man out of his depth, pleaded with her to explain the antidote, to reveal the truth of the glowing liquid. But Maeve remained silent, her eyes briefly meeting young Elara's across the gallery. A flash of understanding passed between them. The truth would put Elara in danger. Maeve would not sacrifice her child's future for her own freedom. Sheriff Brody, a younger, more ambitious man then, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He'd seen the fear in the villagers' eyes, heard Thorne's persuasive promises of a swift solution. Justice was justice, he told himself, but a bitter taste lingered. The judge's gavel cracked like a whip. Guilty on all counts. Young Elara's small cry was swallowed by the sudden eruption of the room, her tear-filled eyes fixed on Maeve as bailiffs approached. Maeve's gaze never left Elara's, a silent promise in their depths. A lifetime of unjust silence began. The subsequent years blurred into a succession of sterile foster homes, each one colder than the last. Young Elara, the child Maeve had saved, felt the weight of her mother's absence like a constant ache. Branded the daughter of a poisoner, she retreated into herself, finding solace not in playgrounds but in the ordered logic of numbers and chemicals. Science became her sanctuary, a place where rules were consistent, where cause and effect held true, unlike the chaotic injustice of her world. She devoured textbooks, her mind a sponge for complex equations, driven by an unspoken, visceral need to unravel Maeve's magic. How had her mother known? How had she created something so miraculous, yet so maligned? This burning question fueled her, propelling her through high school with honors, then to a prestigious university scholarship. Her past, a carefully constructed secret, was a heavy cloak she wore, but beneath it, the ghost of Maeve's wisdom whispered, urging her forward, towards an understanding that transcended mere science. The orphaned chemist was building her future, brick by intellectual brick, but the foundations were laid in the pain of the past. Present day. Elara's apartment, bathed in the cool glow of her laptop. She reviewed Maeve's coded message again, the natural terms translating into complex chemical structures. The urgency was a tightening knot in her chest. She needed help, but trust was a luxury she rarely afforded. Finally, she opened a secure video call, her fingers hovering over the dial button. Dr. Jean Lee, her former professor, answered, his face framed by a wall of academic texts. Dr. Lee, Elara began, her voice carefully modulated, I'm pursuing some unconventional research, historical folk remedies specifically. Jian Li raised a skeptical eyebrow. Unconventional, Elara? You, the queen of empirical data? Indeed. I've stumbled upon some remarkable compounds. Ancient preparations exhibiting surprising stability and reactivity. I believe there's a forgotten science here. Elara described the intricate structures Maeve had hinted at, watching Jian's expression shift from polite disinterest to genuine intrigue. His scientific mind, though initially dismissive of anything not peer-reviewed, recognized the unexpected sophistication. Intriguing, he conceded. I can provide some lab access, limited resources. Purely academic curiosity, of course. Elara's pulse quickened. A glimmer of hope. A cautious alliance formed, though Jian remained blissfully unaware of the true, life-or-death stakes. Miles away, in an office that reeked of polished mahogany and quiet power, Elias Thorne leaned back in his ergonomic chair. On a discreet monitor embedded in his desk, Elara Vance's video call with Dr. Jian Li played silently. Thorne's pale eyes, usually unreadable, held a flicker of irritation. The girl was smart, too smart. He'd watched her rise through the ranks of Thorne Pharmaceuticals, a brilliant mind he'd hoped to harness. But now her unconventional research was veering too close to forbidden territory. He saw the chemical diagrams, the subtle references to Maeve's old work. The ghost of Willow Creek was stirring, and Elara was its unwelcome medium. He tapped a button on his desk. Security. I need an update on Ms. Vance's activities. Every communication, every late night in the lab. Observe and report. If she deviates from approved research paths, I want to know immediately. And discreetly, of course. We wouldn't want any unfortunate accidents. His voice was smooth, cultured, but the unspoken threat hung in the air like poison. Thorne allowed himself a subtle, cold smile. Some secrets were meant to stay buried, and he would ensure they did. Elara drove for hours, leaving the city's concrete labyrinth behind for the winding, overgrown roads of Willow Creek. She found Maeve's old cabin exactly where she remembered it, a shell of its former self, swallowed by years of neglect and invasive vines. The roof had collapsed in places, windows were shattered, and the once vibrant herb garden was a tangle of weeds. Yet as she pushed through the warped door, a faint familiar scent of dried sage and lavender lingered. A ghost of home. Her fingers traced the rough-hewn timbers, memories surfacing like submerged treasures. Maeve teaching her plant names, Maeve humming old folk songs. Following a forgotten instinct, Elara found the loose floorboard under the hearth. Beneath it, a hidden compartment, perfectly preserved. Inside lay Maeve's worn, leather-bound journals, their pages filled with intricate drawings of plants and cryptic notes, and a small, cloth-bound bundle of dried herb samples. Elara's hand trembled as she recognized Maeve's elegant script, a blend of scientific observation and poetic reverence for the natural world. The familiar scent of the herbs, potent even after decades, filled her lungs, a deep, resonant breath from the past. A renewed sense of purpose, fierce and undeniable, surged through her. This wasn't just about vindicating Maeve. It was about honoring a legacy. Elara Vance's lab hummed with the quiet urgency of discovery. Spread across her stainless steel bench were Maeve's intricate journals, their worn pages filled with exquisite drawings of plants and cryptic notes that blended botanical descriptions with almost alchemical symbols. Beside her, Dr. Jian Li peered through a microscope, a frown furrowing his brow. She wasn't just observing, Elara, Jan mused, tapping a complex molecular structure Elara had sketched. She was understanding. This compound, Willow's kiss, as she calls it, it's a potent chelating agent. And river's tear, that's a highly specific antioxidant. How did she isolate these without modern spectroscopy? Elara smiled, a flicker of pride for Maeve warming her. Mama D saw the world differently. She tasted the earth, smelled the air, felt the life force. Her observations were a form of intuition, backed by centuries of inherited wisdom. Their preliminary experiments, translating Maeve's ancient cipher into modern chemistry, were a frustrating dance of trial and error. Beakers bubbled, solutions turned murky, and a small, delicate plant they used for testing showed no signs of improvement. But with each failure, Jian's initial skepticism chipped away, replaced by a dawning respect for the midwife's profound, untaught genius. He saw not just a healer, but a chemist ahead of her time. The stale air of the prison visiting room felt heavy, a stark contrast to the lively hum of Elara's lab. Across the scratched plastic table sat Maeve O'Connell, her once vibrant eyes now clouded with age, her hands gnarled but still steady. Decades had passed, but the connection between them was immediate, raw. Elara fought back tears, seeing the woman who saved her now trapped by the very system she defied. "Mama D," Elara whispered, her voice thick. Maeve offered a gentle, knowing smile. "My Elara, you've grown into the woman I always knew you'd be. A mind sharp as winter frost, a heart warm as summer sun." They spoke in hushed tones, the guard's presence a constant, silent threat. Elara steered the conversation, subtly weaving in scientific terms. "The antidote, Mama D. What makes it hold its balance? The binding affinity, is it purely molecular, or is there a resonant frequency?" Maeve's eyes, though dim, held a familiar spark. "The strongest bonds, child, are not always seen. The river doesn't just flow, it sings, and sometimes, the song is what holds the water." Elara's breath hitched. The song. A cryptic clue, but one she recognized from Maeve's journals. A hidden layer of meaning she was now ready to unlock. Leaving the prison, Elara felt a renewed, fierce determination. Maeve's spirit was unbroken, and now, so was hers. Back in the lab, frustration mounted. Elara and John Lee had recreated Maeve's core compounds, but the antidote remained incomplete. It was potent, yes, but unstable, its efficacy fleeting. A critical component, the song Maeve spoke of, remained elusive. John ran another simulation, shaking his head as the data flashed red. "It's like trying to build a bridge with a missing keystone, Elara. The structure simply won't hold." Elara stared at Maeve's journal, her gaze drawn to a peculiar, almost whimsical sketch of a glowing plant. "What if the missing piece isn't purely chemical, Jian? What if it's resonant, as Mama D said? Tied to something ancient, something spiritual, from Willow Creek itself?" She remembered Maeve's old tales, whispered by firelight, of a rare moss that pulsed with light near a hidden spring. A place Maeve called the Sacred Grove, a legend dismissed by modern science, but now a desperate hope. Jan looked at her, then back at his failed experiments. The rational scientist in him balked, but the desperate human was willing to listen. Elara was already packing a small bag, a fierce urgency guiding her hands. She had to go back. Sheriff Brody's office in Willow Creek was a relic, dusty and cluttered, a mirror of the man himself. Elara stood before him, the scent of old coffee and forgotten paperwork heavy in the air. Brody, older now, his face a roadmap of regret, looked up, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Sheriff Brody," Elara began, her voice steady, "I need to talk about the original contamination and about Maeve O'Connell's trial." Brody stiffened, his jaw tightening. "Justice was served, Ms. Vance. The case is closed." His words were firm, but Elara saw the burden of guilt in the way he avoided her gaze, the tremor in his hands as he shuffled papers. She pressed on. The missing component of the antidote, Maeve hinted it was something natural, unique to Willow Creek, something that binds, that resonates. Did the original contamination reports mention any unusual geological or biological anomalies near the plant? Brody paused, a shadow crossing his face. A flicker of recognition. He cleared his throat, a hint of defensiveness still in his voice. The original reports, they were extensive. Many things were dismissed as irrelevant. He gestured vaguely to a dusty file cabinet, a repository of forgotten truths. Elara knew then. She wasn't just talking to a former adversary. She was talking to a man haunted by his past, a man on the precipice of redemption. The forest surrounding Willow Creek was a cathedral of ancient trees, sunlight dappling through the canopy like scattered gold. Elara, guided by Maeve's cryptic clues and the local legends, moved with a quiet reverence. She navigated dense undergrowth, crossed rushing streams, and climbed slippery slopes, her modern sensibilities melting away with each step deeper into the wilderness. This was Maeve's world, a place of profound wisdom and hidden magic. Finally, nestled within a secluded hollow, she found it. A hidden spring, its waters shimmering with an ethereal glow. And, clinging to the damp rocks, radiating a soft bioluminescent light, was the moss. Maeve's sacred weave, the missing component. Elara reached out, her fingers trembling as they brushed the delicate filaments. A profound sense of connection washed over her, a feeling of Maeve's spirit, her wisdom, her enduring love, flowing through the very earth. This wasn't just a scientific discovery. It was a homecoming. A triumphant smile broke across Elara's face. The antidote was within reach. The air in Elara's lab hummed with controlled energy, a stark contrast to the quiet triumph building within her. With Dr. John Lee watching, a mixture of awe and skepticism etched on his face, Elara carefully drew a viscous, shimmering liquid into a pipette. The final, painstaking recreation of Maeve's antidote. It glowed with a soft, ethereal light, a testament to ancient wisdom and modern precision. She applied a single drop to a blighted plant, its leaves withered and brown from a synthetic contaminant. Within moments, a verdant flush spread, the plant unfurling with renewed vitality, almost too quickly to believe. "It works," Gian whispered, his voice thick with disbelief and profound respect. "It truly works, identical to your mother's description." Elara's breath hitched, a wave of relief washing over her, quickly followed by a cold dread. "Yes," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "And now, everyone will know what Maeve created, and what Thorne tried to bury." The triumph was intoxicating, but the danger it heralded felt like a physical weight. The next morning, the lab felt different. A subtle chill, a misplaced wrench, a faint metallic tang that wasn't supposed to be there. Elara, with her surgeon's eye for detail, noticed it immediately. She moved to the incubator, where their precious antidote sample rested. A critical power surge. Not a random fluctuation, but a precise, almost surgical overload. The cooling system had nearly failed, threatening to destabilize the delicate compound. "This wasn't an accident," Elara stated, her voice tight with suppressed fury. She traced the scorched wiring. The timing, the specific component targeted it, was designed to look like a malfunction. Designed to destroy our work without leaving a trace. John Lee, his face grim, examined the wiring. "Thorne," he breathed, the name a curse. His previous academic detachment had vanished, replaced by a fierce protectiveness. He knows we have it." This wasn't just a warning, Elara. This was a clear message. He will stop at nothing. Sheriff Brody's office was a cluttered testament to decades of rural policing. But his eyes, when Elara met them, held a new, uneasy clarity. She placed Maeve's recreated antidote and a selection of her journals on his desk, alongside the meticulous chemical analysis Jean Lee had provided. "Sheriff," Elara began, her voice steady, "this is the antidote Maeve created 25 years ago, the one Thorne Pharmaceuticals tried to erase. The one that saved my life." She explained the cover-up, the manipulated evidence, Thorne's ruthless complicity in the original poisoning. Brody listened, his gruff demeanor slowly crumbling. He remembered Maeve, her quiet dignity, his own dismissive attitude. The weight of his past inaction pressed down on him. "Lord, forgive me," he muttered, running a hand over his face. "All these years I let them make a monster out of a healer." His gaze met Elara's, a new resolve hardening his features. "What do you need? What can I do to help you bring him down?" Elias Thorne leaned back in his opulent office chair, the city lights a glittering tapestry below. His face, usually a mask of suave confidence, was now drawn tight with cold fury. The intel had just come in. Brody was making inquiries. Elara Vance had made a breakthrough. His empire, built on lies and ruthless ambition, was truly at risk. The thought of Maeve O'Connell, that obstinate midwife, being vindicated by her adopted child, churned in his gut. It was an insult, a desecration of his carefully constructed narrative. "Unacceptable," he murmured to the empty room. "She thinks she can challenge me on my own turf." He would not allow it. An international scientific symposium was approaching, a perfect stage. He would not just stop her, he would obliterate her. Publicly. He would use his influence, his carefully cultivated, scientific experts, to discredit her, label her antidote a fraud, and bury her in Maeve's legacy forever. He would turn her moment of triumph into an enduring humiliation. Elara's lab had shed its sterile veneer, transforming into a frenetic war room. Maps of Willow Creek, financial ledgers, and old news clippings were tacked to every available surface, illuminated by the harsh glow of computer screens. Days bled into nights as Elara, Dr. Jian Li, and Sheriff Brody, an unlikely trio, meticulously pieced together 2 decades of lies. "These are the original police reports," Brody said, his voice gruff, sliding a thick folder across the table. Most of it was buried or dismissed. Funny how insufficient evidence always popped up when Thorne Pharma was involved. Jian Li hunched over a laptop, tapped a series of keys. My network found a pattern. Spikes in reported illnesses coinciding with Thorne's quarterly reports. They were cutting corners, Elara, dumping untreated waste to boost profits. His intellectual curiosity had curdled into righteous anger. Elara, her eyes scanning a complex spreadsheet, slammed her fist on the table. "And the ecological reports! Look at this. They manipulated the data, concealed the specific contaminant. It's all here. The exact chemical signature Maeve warned about, but they covered it up, then blamed her for the community's sickness." The outrage was a raw, burning fire in her chest. Every line of data, every suppressed document, screamed a truth long denied, a truth that had cost Maeve her freedom and Elara her childhood. Elias Thorne, from the plush comfort of his opulent office, watched the digital breadcrumbs Elara's team inadvertently left. A cold smile played on his lips as he saw Brody's name linked to Elara's research. Nollis a meddling sheriff and a zealous chemist. Thorne picked up his phone, his voice a silken thread of menace. "It seems our young Dr. Vance is getting ambitious. Time for a reminder. An accident. Make it look like a disgruntled academic, perhaps, and ensure the antidote sample is utterly, irrevocably gone." Hours later, the lab exploded in a symphony of shattering glass and sparking wires. Elara, her heart pounding against her ribs, shoved John Lee towards the emergency exit, clutching the precious vial of antidote. "Go, now!" The air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of chemicals. Shadowy figures, swift and brutal, moved through the wreckage. They were too close. They were everywhere, Gins. Elara felt a searing pain as a piece of equipment grazed her arm, but she ignored it, her focus solely on the glowing liquid in her hand. This wasn't just evidence, it was Maeve's legacy, her sacrifice. She wasn't letting it go. Not now. Not ever. Shaken, breathless but alive, Elara and Jian collapsed into Sheriff Brody's hidden cabin, deep in the woods outside Willow Creek. The rustic space, a stark contrast to the gleaming lab they'd just fled, offered a fragile sanctuary. "They almost got us," Jian gasped, wiping soot from his brow. "Thorne is far more ruthless than I imagined." Brody, his face etched with grim resolve, poured them mugs of strong coffee. "He's a cornered snake, but we have him. Or, rather, have him." He walked to an old, weathered chest in the corner, its wood scarred with age. With trembling hands he pulled out a small, corked vial, its murky liquid glinting faintly. "I couldn't let it be buried. Not with Maeve." It was from the riverbed, right after the plant opened. The very first sample. I kept it hidden, even from the official investigation. Elara gasped, reaching for the vial. "The original poison, the signature." Jean Lee leaned in, his analytical gaze intense. "If this matches the contaminant in Maeve's journals, and your antidote neutralizes it, it's irrefutable proof." Brody nodded, the burden of 2 decades finally beginning to lift. "It's time to set things right. For Maeve. For Willow Creek. For me." The International Scientific Symposium was a glittering spectacle, a grand stage of modern intellect and corporate power. Elias Thorne, impeccably dressed, delivered a polished presentation, his voice smooth as silk as he spoke of innovation and progress. He subtly wove in warnings against, quote, untested, unscientific remedies, his gaze sweeping the room, lingering on Elara in the front row. "True science," he purred, is built on verifiable facts, not folklore or dangerous superstitions. Then, it was Elara's turn. She walked onto the brightly lit stage, the hum of anticipation filling the vast hall, cameras flashing like hungry eyes. Her presence was quiet, yet commanded attention, a stark contrast to Thorne's bluster. She carried herself with the poise of a scientist, the dignity of a woman carrying a sacred trust. In her prison cell, miles away, Maeve O'Connell watched on a contraband device, her weathered hands clutching a worn charm. A silent blessing, a fierce prayer, passed between mother and daughter, across the digital divide. Elara stood at the podium, a single clear vial of amber liquid glowing softly in her hand, her eyes fixed on the audience, on Thorne, and on the truth she was about to unleash. In the stark confines of her prison cell, Maeve O'Connell watched the flickering screen, her heart a drum against her ribs. Elara. Her Elara. So grown, so formidable, standing on that grand stage. A mix of pride and a terrifying, bone-deep fear warred within her. She remembered Elara as a child, her bright eyes wide with curiosity, asking about the singing plants and the Yannick whispering waters. She was always meant for this, a bridge between the old ways and the new. A memory surfaced, young Elara, no older than 7, meticulously sorting dried herbs, her tiny fingers surprisingly deft. "Mama Maeve," she'd asked, "how do you know which ones talk to each other?" Maeve had smiled. "You listen, child, truly listen, and you learn their language." Now, Elara spoke a different language, that of modern science, but the wisdom was the same. A single tear, warm and heavy, traced a path down Maeve's cheek. Not a tear of despair, but of hope. Hope that Elara would succeed. Hope that the truth, like a persistent seed, would finally break through the concrete of lies. Maeve clenched her fist around the handmade charm, a silent vow that her spirit was with her daughter, fighting alongside her. The grand hall buzzed with the low hum of anticipation, lights glinting off polished surfaces. Elias Thorne, a picture of corporate elegance, had just concluded his opening remarks, a thinly veiled attack on untested, unproven folk remedies. He'd presented himself as the guardian of scientific integrity, subtly casting shadows on any challenge to his narrative. But when Elara Vance stepped onto the podium, the room shifted. Her presence, calm and commanding, silenced the murmurs. Large screens behind her flared to life, displaying complex molecular structures, intricate data, and compelling clinical trial results. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elara began, her voice clear and resonant, "today I present to you not a remedy, but an antidote. A synthesis of ancient wisdom and modern chemistry capable of reversing the effects of the industrial toxin, Thorne 97. She activated a live demonstration, showing a withered plant rapidly regaining its vitality with a single drop of the glowing viscous liquid. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Thorne, seated in the front row, his confident smile fixed, felt a cold tremor, the first crack in his carefully constructed facade. The air in the symposium hall crackled. Elara's scientific presentation had stunned them, but her next words were a thunderclap. "This antidote," she declared, her gaze locking onto Thorne, "was first discovered 25 years ago by Maeve O'Connell, a woman you framed for poisoning her own community to cover up your company's ecological disaster." A wave of shock swept through the room. Thorne shot to his feet, his face contorted. "This is outrageous. Slander. She's a charlatan, a criminal's daughter, fabricating lies." But Elara was relentless. "I have proof," she gestured. Dr. Jian Li stepped forward, displaying damning financial ledgers on the screens, hidden payments, manipulated reports. These documents confirm a decades-long pattern of environmental negligence and systematic cover-up by Thorne Pharmaceuticals. Then Sheriff Brody, grim-faced and resolute, placed a small, sealed vial on the podium. "And this," he announced, his voice carrying the weight of years of regret, "is a sample of the original contaminant, recovered from Willow Creek 25 years ago, chemically identical to the waste products from Thorne's plant." The media section erupted in a frenzy of flashes and shouts. Thorne screamed, It's all a conspiracy, lies, all of it! But his words were drowned out by the rising tide of outrage. The stage became a maelstrom of flashing cameras and shouting voices. Elias Thorne, his face purple with fury, lunged forward, but security officers were already closing in. "You can't do this," he shrieked, his cultured voice cracking into desperation. "I am Elias Thorne. This is my empire." But the empire was crumbling. Sheriff Brody, his duty finally clear, took the lead, his commands firm and unwavering. "Mr. Thorne, you're under arrest." As the handcuffs clicked, Thorne struggled, screaming threats and denials that evaporated into the chaos. He was dragged away, his once impeccable suit now disheveled, his public image shattered beyond repair. Elara watched him go, a profound weariness settling over her, mixed with a deep, quiet satisfaction. The battle, the long, arduous fight for truth and her mother's name, was finally, definitively over. The audience, a moment ago in uproar, now rose in a standing ovation, not for the downfall of a villain, but for the triumph of justice. The cold, sterile air of Maeve's prison cell felt different that afternoon. A sliver of sunlight, rare and precious, cut through the single high window. Maeve sat on her cot, calm as ever, when Sheriff Brody appeared. His face was etched with a mix of exhaustion, relief, and a deep-seated remorse. "Maeve," he began, his voice gruff but gentle, "I have news. All charges against you, they've been dropped. You're free." Maeve closed her eyes, a lifetime of injustice lifting from her shoulders like a forgotten cloak. She simply nodded, a quiet dignity in her acceptance. "It's been a long road, Brody." He shifted his weight, unable to meet her gaze fully. "Maeve, I was wrong. 25 years ago I failed you. I let myself be swayed by power, by fear. I am truly sorry." Maeve looked at him, her eyes holding no bitterness, only understanding. The river finds its way to the sea, Brody. And sometimes, truth finds its way home, no matter how long the journey. A faint, hopeful smile touched her lips. "Elara, she was brave, wasn't she?" Brody nodded, a lump in his throat. "Bravest I've ever seen." Maeve looked towards the sunlit window. The prison gates, after so many years, would finally open for her. A few months later, the scent of fresh pine and sun-warmed earth hung over Willow Creek. Maeve's old cabin, once a symbol of neglect, now stood transformed. It was the Willow Creek Healing Center, a vibrant hub bustling with life, light, and the quiet hum of purpose. Maeve, her face etched with years but softened by peace, stood beside Elara, Dr. John Lee, and Sheriff Brody. Villagers, once divided by fear and suspicion, now gathered, their faces alight with gratitude. Elara, her gaze sweeping over the integrated design, Maeve's herb garden flowing seamlessly into a modern consultation room, felt a profound sense of rightness. This wasn't just a building, it was a living testament to healing, a place where Maeve's ancient wisdom would meet Elara's scientific precision. The community cheered, celebrating Maeve as their enduring hero, and Elara as the brilliant successor who had made this new dawn possible. Inside the Healing Center's lab, Elara and Dr. John Lee worked in a harmony that transcended their different worlds. Gleaming centrifuges whirred alongside baskets of dried herbs. Elara meticulously analyzed a traditional poultice, its chemical structure revealing surprising efficacy. Her intuition, Gian murmured, studying the data. It was always years ahead of its time. They discussed expanding the antidote's application, proving Maeve's once-forgotten wisdom with irrefutable modern rigor. Gian, now a fervent advocate for their unique blend of knowledge, had already secured grants, his intellectual skepticism replaced by a profound respect. Elara knew Maeve had not just passed down remedies but a legacy, a bridge between old ways and new, a testament to what happens when open minds unite. In Maeve's revitalized garden, bathed in the soft glow of a setting sun, mother and daughter sat in quiet contemplation. The herbs Maeve had tended for decades thrived, a tapestry of green and purple. "You did well, child," Maeve said, her voice a gentle rustle like the leaves. "You carried the torch, even when the path was dark." Elara squeezed Maeve's hand, feeling the strength and resilience that had sustained them both. "I only walked the path you lit, Mama. Your love, your wisdom, that was the real antidote." They spoke of their journey, the sacrifices, the triumph, and how this unique blend of knowledge, passed from generation to generation, would continue to heal and inspire, a living testament to what enduring love could build. A year later, Willow Creek flourished. The river ran clear, the children played without fear, and the healing center bustled, a beacon of hope. Thorne Pharmaceuticals, once a titan of industry, was dismantled, its legacy of greed replaced by Maeve's philosophy of care. This was the true antidote, not just a chemical compound, but the unwavering belief that love, truth, and perseverance will always find a way to heal and triumph. It was a testament to the quiet strength of Maeve, the fierce brilliance of Elara, and the enduring power of a community that chose compassion over despair. Love always finds a way.